Rian brought fabric to teach Fushi how to make clothes, and shared that her 16th birthday party is next week. She wants to invite Fushi and Gugu to join. Over the past 4 years, Fushi has not transformed, and his body has aged with time. Fortunately, the knockers did not find them, so Fushi remained unchanged and did not produce any objects. The beholder finds the ordinary human life mundane. At this moment, Rian asks Fushi about Gugu's likes. Fushi mentions Gugu loves shrimp and would like anything given by Rian. Sighing, Rian reveals that after turning 16, she must marry a fiancé chosen by her parents, whom she has never met. Disliking this arranged marriage, she plans to introduce her own boyfriend to her parents at her birthday party, but first, she needs to find one and develop that relationship. Rian feels shy discussing it, but Fushi senses different emotions in her. Fushi mentions that Gugu also harbors similar feelings, which piques Rian's interest. Fushi tries to reveal Gugu's feelings for Rian, but is interrupted as Rian had already made a dried shrimp doll, and Fushi had made a handkerchief for Booze Man. They chat eagerly, unaware that Gugu is watching them through the window, and Gugu's brother has also arrived. Fushi asks Rian if she plans to discuss marriage with Gugu. Surprised, Rian wonders how Fushi knew about her feelings for Gugu. Fushi explains that Gugu adores Rian and would likely agree to marry her. As they talk, Booze Man returns, informing them that Gugu is meeting his brother. They rush out to find Gugu's brother apologizing for his past mistakes. Regretful, he explains he didn't sell the precious ring Gugu gave him during tough times, but opened a farm tools shop, and business is stable now. He hopes to take Gugu back to fulfill their childhood dreams together. However, Gugu refuses, stating that while being abandoned was sad, the blessings he found afterward feel miraculous. Booze Man, despite his chaotic experiments, is smart and saved his life. Grandma Piorin is knowledgeable and humorous. Rian is kind and fun. Fushi has become an irreplaceable younger brother. Thus, he does not wish to leave. His brother, accepting the situation, only hopes Gugu will seek him out if ever in trouble. Before leaving, Gugu's brother gives the ring back to Booze Man to pass to Gugu. Seeing the familiar ring, Rian recalls a childhood memory of her lost puppy. Realizing she had noticed Gugu at the market even before the puppy's disappearance, unaware of the connection they would eventually share, Rian decided to return the ring to Gugu personally. She found him sleeping in the field. Feeling joyful, she planned to slip the ring on his finger. However, the ring size had changed over the years, and it almost broke Gugu's finger. Rian asked Gugu why he hadn't confessed his feelings to her. She reminded him of his declaration of love before he ran away from home. Gugu claimed he didn't remember, which made Rian blush and insist that he attend her birthday party. After Rian left, Gugu blushed, realizing what had happened. Booze Man also found Gugu and brought him a new mask. The mask had a built-in lighter, necessary after Gugu's previous mask was damaged in a door-knocking battle. Gugu praised Booze Man as a genius. On the day of the birthday party, Booze Man advised Gugu to empty his stomach of alcohol, preferring safety over enjoying the feast, as they were wary of a potential knocker attack. Booze Man felt sentimental, fearing he might not see Gugu and the others progress in their lives due to his age. On their way to Rayon's home, Gugu bought a purple bellflower, Rayon's favorite color. The party was bustling, hosted by a wealthy local family. Gugu and Fushi tasted the food, ignoring the stares from other guests. Rian came downstairs, saw Gugu's new mask, and mistakenly thought her failed confession had angered him. In her frustration, she threw a sweet potato, accidentally breaking the mask. At that moment, Fushi presented his gift, and Gugu revealed the bellflower from behind. The noise increased when a maid told Gugu that this flower was from the scene of an accident Rian had 4 years ago, causing him to apologize immediately. Rian cherished the flower despite her traumatic memories because it was a gift from Gugu. Some guests thought Gugu was rude and tried to remove his mask, causing him to fall into a pool. Hearing the noise, Rian rushed out and handed him a towel. Her father then called her to meet her fiancé. Fushi and Gugu watched them talk, sensing Rian's unhappiness. Gugu felt distressed and decided to leave the party, lamenting that Rian might not visit the tavern as freely in the future. Recalling Perona's words about seizing one's life, Fushi countered Gugu's resignation. Gugu was lost in thought in the courtyard when Rian approached him to talk about the mask. Gugu honestly explained his past concerns about her shoulder injury. Rayan, no longer troubled by her past, viewed Gugu as her lifesaver. As she stepped forward, Gugu noticed the coastal viewing platform was breaking and pushed Rayan to safety, falling off the cliff himself. Meanwhile, Fushi, eating snacks, received a warning from the beholder that the knockers had arrived. The battle began. After the beholder warned Fushi, he immediately evacuated everyone from the venue. He transformed into a bear to support the collapsing roof, helping the guests escape the hall. At the same time, Gugu didn't fall into the sea. Instead, he grabbed a tentacle emerging from the ground, which then bit him under the arm. Rian's fiancé arrived at the scene and helped pull Gugu to safety. Gugu rushed back to the banquet hall and heard Fushi guiltily say the knockers had found them. Most people had already escaped, but Rian's parents were still there. Gugu carried them out as the house collapsed behind them. Rian, not wanting Gugu to return to the dangerous ruins, grabbed his hand to confess her feelings. However, Gugu pulled away and ran back inside, where he found Fushi transformed into Shiro. The knocker had turned into a giant bear made of stone, and Gugu's flames were ineffective against it. The beholder was right. The knockers had evolved. The ground split open, and Gugu and Fushi fell underground, finding spikes there. Fortunately, Fushi quickly used a gun he transformed into to wedge against the wall. However, the twisting tentacles underground could change the terrain, nearly crushing them. Luckily, Fushi transformed into March and quickly climbed to the surface, pulling Gugu up. Unsure how to defeat the evolved knocker, Gugu noted that it was only covered in stone on the surface, but had a flesh-like structure inside. They decided to climb onto the creature to investigate. However, the giant bear was encased in layers of stone. Gugu asked Fushi for some wooden spears, broke through the stone, and spat fire inside, finally defeating the giant bear. But the bear stuck its tentacles into the wall, transferring its core through them. They thought the knocker would escape, but suddenly a bear's hand reached out from the wall, crushing Fushi transformed as March. Another hand swatted towards Gugu, but Rayan rushed over and pushed him aside, saving them both. Nevertheless, the knocker did not intend to let them go. Rian told Gugu it was too dangerous, and they needed to leave the ruins. Before they could escape, the entire house collapsed. Fushi, transformed back into Shiro, suddenly felt pain that was not his own. He froze as he realized Gugu and Rian were buried under the rubble. Gugu protected Rian by shielding her with his body, reassuring her that help would come soon. He promised to buy her a new flower the next day, but Rian said there was no need. They could pick one together, agreeing to visit that place. Rian, noticing blood under Gugu's mask, fought back tears and touched his face. She finally heard Gugu's confession and could not hold back anymore, embracing and kissing him. Meanwhile, Fushi, in agony, fell to his knees and transformed into Gugu. He could only take the form of someone after they had died, and Fushi was reluctant to accept Gugu's death. He furiously spewed flames at the knocker. Getting knocked into the sea. The knocker followed but exploded upon hitting the water due to the prior intense heat, though its core escaped. The beholder instructed Fushi to chase it west, where part of its core was located. Fushi heard rescue operations above and wanted to see Gugu one last time. By then, Rayan had been rescued, but Gugu had already passed away. Gugu's brother arrived at the scene and painfully carried Gugu's body away. In his dream, Gugu was carried by his brother to meet Boo's man and Grandma Pioran. His disfigured face was restored. Rian happily invited him to pick flowers together. Gugu followed them for a few steps but suddenly remembered the enemy and Fushi's safety. He immediately turned back and found Fushi and his brother had returned home. Upon hearing the news about Gugu, the four of them wept uncontrollably, unable to accept the truth. Gugu's spirit embraced them all, leaving his helmet with Boo's man. Fushi, changing forms, reverted to the young Shiro. He told Pioran and Boo's man that he needed to leave to continue his journey because the knocker would inevitably come for him, and he didn't want to involve anyone else. Gugu's brother stayed behind to handle the aftermath. While Fushi had not yet left, Gugu's spirit also lingered, staying by Fushi's side, expressing no regrets. He then noticed the spirit of March, who also did not want to leave. Fushi, unable to see either spirit, met Ryan, who had come looking for him. To avoid upsetting her, he unconsciously transformed into Gugu. Ryan embraced him but realized the Gugu in front of her did not respond. Understanding something was amiss, she asked where Fushi was. Fushi falsely claimed he had died, causing Ryan to burst into tears. Later, Ryan visited what was said to be Fushi's grave. Grandma Pioran reminded Fushi it was time to leave. Fushi then falsely claimed he was going shopping. Ryan said she would wait for him at the flower-picking spot and intended to give the ring to Fushi transformed as Gugu. Fushi almost slipped up, but refused the ring, suggesting she keep it as a memento. Boo's man handed Fushi his luggage, and the three saw him off. Rian lay in the garden until late at night when her father came to find her. Declaring she no longer planned to marry, she confessed she already had someone she loved. Her father asked whom she loved. Touching the ring on her hand, Rain, in tears, said that person was no longer there. Since Fushi could transform into Gugu, he began to think like Gugu and developed emotions. 4 days after leaving Boo's man's house, Fushi was managing his feelings. Once settled, he summoned the Beholder, who appeared promptly. Fushi questioned what the Beholder really wanted from him, and the purpose of his existence. The Beholder explained Fushi was meant to collect and store information about this land, acting somewhat as his parent in this regard. Fushi argued that the Beholder was not his parent. That person was, but memories had been taken, making it hard to remember March. Fushi didn't understand why Gugu died instead of him. The Beholder was pleased Fushi had developed the ability to think for himself and told him the world would be destroyed, which is why Fushi was needed. Fushi was a unique life form, and the Knocker wanted to control him. Fushi felt that if he was no longer himself, perhaps the Knocker would no longer pursue him. The Beholder forcibly reverted Fushi back, stating that the Knockers would still come after him, and that in his current form, Fushi could easily be manipulated, eventually reverting to a spherical form. The Beholder was indifferent, but noted that losing memories would be painful for Fushi. Fushi questioned why the Beholder, being powerful, couldn't control him or fight the Knockers himself. The Beholder acknowledged his strength, but explained that the core of the Knockers' plan was to destroy them, and only Fushi could stop the Knockers. He also mentioned that he would eventually disappear, and Fushi needed to become strong enough to defeat the Knockers on his own. The Beholder revealed that Fushi was a stepping stone in his plan, which angered Fushi, thinking the Beholder was selfish. Fushi was about to act on his anger when the Beholder sighed, lamenting his child's rebellion was heartbreaking. Fushi felt that regardless of what he did, Gugu could not be brought back to life, and thus whatever happened next did not matter. At that moment, Fushi smelled Grandma Pioran's scent. She had followed him. She explained that she came here to help Fushi grow, but it turned out that Gugu was the one who exerted himself, and now that he was gone, she had to continue accompanying Fushi. Pioran also told Fushi that Rian had realized that the Gugu she saw that day was Fushi in disguise, which is why she sent her away. Rayan and Gugu's brother were helping at the shop. Fushi urged Pioran to go back, mentioning that the Knockers could find him at any time. Pioran expressed her desire to make her fleeting life meaningful by helping Fushi, but Fushi feared others crying in front of him or witnessing loved ones depart again, so he wanted her to leave quickly. Pioran refused, insisting on making her own life decisions and staying with Fushi, continuously feeding him food despite his refusals. Their relationship resembled a grandmother doting on a stubborn grandchild. Fortunately for Fushi, who was not truly stubborn, he was just afraid that being too close to Pioran would make her departure harder to endure. Unable to refuse Pioran's closeness, Fushi could only pray that she would not die carelessly. Pioran continued with Fushi, and upon discovering a village ahead, she immediately took him there to eat. Fushi was reluctant to enter crowded places because he couldn't defeat the Knockers, so he stayed outside the village. He asked the Beholder if he could sense where the Knockers were. The Beholder described the Knockers as bugs crawling on him. He could feel the adult bugs, but the eggs were hard to detect. However, once the adult bugs started moving, it made him very uncomfortable. Pioran packed some food for Fushi, and upon her return, she saw him talking to the air, urging him not to hide things from her. Thus, Fushi told her about the Beholder and expressed his unwillingness to be manipulated by him. Yet, with danger looming, he felt he must protect Pioran, so he had to try to become stronger. Pioran responded that she did not think she needed Fushi's protection, suggesting that living like a drifter wasn't necessarily a bad thing. Fushi nodded, but felt as if he had lost something. While they were traveling and picking fruits, Pioran mentioned March. Although Fushi had similar memories, he couldn't recall March's appearance or experiences, and had even forgotten March as a person. This was when Pioran realized that Fushi's memories had been stolen. Pioran mentioned that this was akin to dying a second time, stating that true death occurs when one is completely forgotten. Hence, Fushi decided to double his efforts, recalling Gugu's words about transforming by stimulating himself. For instance, touching a crab and experiencing its pain and the sensation of being cooked. Fushi also discussed with Pioran about stones cracking when exposed to water. Pioran explained thermal expansion and contraction to him, noting that evaporation causes significant damage. Pointing to an uninhabited island on the map, she suggested going there to train and enhance his transformation abilities, as it was devoid of humans and would prevent unintended harm. However, Fushi was worried about the lack of boats and the possibility of not being able to escape if they encountered a knocker. Pioran believed that worrying too much would prevent one from stepping forward in life. They ended up on the shore looking for a boat to the island, but mistakenly boarded a slave trader's ship. Fushi got marked with a triangle, and men and women were separated and imprisoned. On the island, someone noticed Fushi's hand had no mark and thought he was a non-criminal who was wrongly brought there. Just then, the straw hat girl who had tricked Fushi onto the ship appeared. She made an excuse to take Fushi away and told him not to worry, saying people on the island would soon smile, though whether genuinely or not was uncertain. As for Pioran, her whereabouts were unknown. Fushi left the straw hat girl named Tonari and went to look for Pioran. During his search, he fell and died, but Tonari and her companion witnessed Fushi's resurrection. Tonari informed Fushi that the island was a prison isle for extremely dangerous criminals. Even if Fushi found Pioran, escaping with her would be impossible due to the prisoner marks on their hands. Fushi was furious, having been deceived by Tonari onto the ship. Tonari then told Fushi that the only way to leave the island was to participate in a gladiatorial event. Winning this would grant ultimate authority, allowing one to become king, marry a princess, or leave the island. Fushi said he would do it if it meant saving Pioran, although he didn't understand what a gladiatorial event entailed. He asked those nearby, but they were too fierce to respond. The event's host announced that the rules remained unchanged. The crowd was divided into 8 groups, and each group would fight until only one person was left. The winners would then compete in a 4-person matchup. Weapons were allowed, and survival meant victory. Hearing this, Fushi felt confident since all he needed to do was stay alive to win. However, he was immediately immobilized at the start of the event. When Fushi finally got up from the ground, he saw a brutal slaughter unfolding in the arena. Only one person was left alive. Fushi almost vomited. Just as everyone cheered for the winner, Tonari mentioned that one person hadn't fought yet. All eyes then turned to Fushi. The winner threw his axe at Fushi, hitting him in the head. To everyone's surprise, Fushi did not die. Fushi was worried about revealing his special powers, as Boozman had warned him, but he knew he needed to survive. Seeing that Fushi was not dead even after an axe hit his head, the winner attacked him with other weapons, stabbing him through. Still, Fushi remained alive, prompting the winner to surrender immediately. Tonari was impressed by Fushi's abilities and praised him, predicting he would make a mark. Fushi's immortal body quickly became famous on the island, and people began to regard him almost like a god. Since Fushi was a strong candidate for becoming the island's leader, many tried to forge relationships with him. Tonari, noting she found him, charged anyone who wanted to talk to Fushi. Everyone hoped to win the leader's favor to possibly leave the island. The previous leader had died just 2 weeks after being elected, but Fushi, with his immortal body, was different. He was sure to hold the position firmly. Tonari even had the person who first noticed Fushi's unmarked hand prepare a boat, believing that once Fushi took charge, he could release many prisoners. Tonari thought the island's chaos stemmed from a lack of leadership. With his immortal body, Fushi could be a permanent leader. Despite being misled, Fushi preferred not to engage with those using him. He walked the streets of the island alone. Tonari's friends, including a chubby man named Uroi, a red-haired girl named Mia, and 2 children, Sandel and Upa, joined him. They showed Fushi around the island, which had residential areas and even a church, supposedly for appearances, claiming it didn't discriminate against prisoners based on religion. Fushi saw bodies hanging in the fields, killed for stealing food, as murder was permitted on the island. He struggled to accept this reality, but Tonari advised him to adapt quickly. Islanders could leave, but had limited boat materials, necessitating careful use. They monitored each other, and escapees were executed. Originally, the island served as a kingdom's place to exile criminals. As more people arrived, management was abandoned. With no authority left, the islanders governed themselves and accepted incoming prisoners. Only a few non-criminals trusted could work here. Fushi noticed that Tonari's triangle was different from the prisoners. Hers didn't have a circle in the middle, indicating it was a family crest, not a prisoner mark. Fushi confronted Tonari. If prisoners could live normally here, why was Pioran imprisoned? Who had ordered their capture? Tonari claimed Pioran was a notorious criminal, possibly caught for poisoning 10 Yalome people. Fushi recalled Pioran's words on the card about her past as a sinner. Tonari also told Fushi that she was indeed hired to deceive Fushi and Pioran into boarding the ship. The person who hired her was supposedly on board too, but his whereabouts are unknown now. Fushi was deeply shocked and decided to leave, commenting that Tonari and her group were not sane for being able to laugh in such a place. Fushi left Tonari and her group, wanting to kill a crow and transform into its form to fly and find Pioran. However, Fushi's archery skills were poor, so he summoned the Beholder to transport him to Pioran. The Beholder stated it could only help Fushi become stronger, not enhance him directly. Fushi refused to participate in the upcoming matches because he did not want to kill anyone. The Beholder reminded Fushi that he had already killed several people, including Gugu, who would not have died if not for Fushi. From a god's perspective, this was true, but logically, it did not make sense. According to the Beholder's logic, Conan from next door would almost be Japan's butcher. The Beholder explained it was not blaming Fushi. Death was inevitable, and humans could choose to face death at any time. Gugu could have survived, but chose to sacrifice himself to save Fushi, which was a form of suicide. Those who participated in the arena did so to gain something by risking their lives. The Beholder believed Fushi should not feel pain for those who chose death willingly. Fushi felt he could not communicate effectively with the Beholder and decided to try on his own. That night, he fell asleep under a tower where a cloaked woman found and kissed him. But Fushi did not notice as he was asleep. The next day, Fushi continued climbing walls. Tonari informed him that his match would start in 2 hours. Suddenly, an uncle informed them that a VIP guest from the Yalome country had disappeared. Tonari hurriedly took the uncle to the arena, where they found that the so-called VIP was Hayase, who had gone mad in the match. Fushi then smelled a familiar scent, but could not remember it until a mole popped out of a hole. Fushi, in his white wolf form, accidentally killed the mole and felt guilty. He then realized he could transform into a mole. Just as he was about to dig underground, a passing bird grabbed him and dropped him in front of Tonari and her group. The match had already started. Fushi was pushed into the arena where his opponent was the winner from Group 2. Fushi manifested numerous weapons on his body, trying to persuade the opponent to surrender. But the opponent tore off the weapons and even bit and swallowed a piece of flesh from Fushi's arm. Fushi tried changing forms to frighten the opponent into surrendering so he wouldn't have to kill anyone. However, the seasoned fighters in the arena were not easily scared. Regardless of Fushi's transformations, the opponent found them uninteresting until Fushi remembered Perona, who had taught him the meaning of life. Subconsciously, Fushi transformed into Perona's form. My God, if Hayase wasn't dead, and Fushi could transform into Perona, it meant Perona had died. What a tragedy, my beautiful sister. Fushi struggles to accept Perona's death. However, the Beholder sees pain as a path to growth. Tonari runs over to Fushi, confesses she felt guilty, and wants to make amends by inviting him to a meal. Fushi immediately declines. Tonari finds Fushi's female form attractive and fragrant. Fushi is dragged to eat by Tonari where they witness a cow being slaughtered. Sensing the pain, Fushi turns away. Tonari suggests that Fushi's aversion to killing stems from past experiences, but notes that some people deserve death, like Fushi's opponent who killed 50 others. Tonari proposes forming an archery team where she targets those deserving death using Fushi. Fushi rejects being used by anyone, including Tonari. When Tonari asks how she can be liked by Fushi, he states it's impossible since she imprisoned Pioran. Tonari argues that Pioran too is killed, but Fushi trusts only the Pioran he knows. Tonari believes her father was wrongly accused of murder, but can't prove it as he's dead. She claims her invitation to Fushi onto the ship was to change things, though Fushi accuses her of deception. Tonari reveals Pioran went missing upon arrival, likely due to the woman who deceived them. Tonari promises to help Fushi find people, advising him to smile when unhappy. After she leaves, Fushi, distrusting her, turns into a mole and digs to the dungeon but can't break through. Transforming into Perona, Fushi calls out to Pioran, who responds and learns of Perona's death, likely while protecting others. Pioran, realizing her carelessness, urges Fushi to transform into a fish or bird to escape. Fushi wants to take Pioran with him, but she says it's locked and she belongs in prison as a sinner. Pioran urges Fushi to find the knocker since both March and Perona would want him to remember March and help those in need. Tonari then informs Fushi from outside the wall that she has news but will only share if he wins the third round. Before the match, Tonari advises aiming at the opponent's head to win without killing. In the arena, Fushi's attacks as Perona are blocked, and the crowd urges him to kill. Fushi shields his opponent, surprising him, but an arrow strikes from behind, baffling Fushi about how events unfolded. Leaving the arena, Fushi sees his opponent severely wounded, with his brother crying beside him. Like Tonari, the opponent is a descendant of criminals. There is no circle in a triangle. The opponent asks Fushi why he didn't kill him. Fushi replies that pain is unpleasant, so he doesn't want to inflict it on others. He only wants to save one person. The opponent reveals he came to the island to rescue his mother, who was deceived into coming, but she died last year. Now he lives only to help his brother leave the island. Fushi sees Gugu in him and promises to take them both away if he wins. Tonari interrupts their conversation. Fushi recalls needing to ask Tonari for information, but she starts making things up. Frustrated, Fushi decides he can no longer trust her as she speaks nothing but nonsense. At this moment, the opponent's brother invites Fushi to stay for a meal, but they struggle to light the fire. Fushi transforms into Gugu and lights the stove for them. Suddenly, the beholder appears and urges Fushi to change back into Shiro. A crowd of villagers surrounds them, accusing Fushi of disrespecting the island's rules and trampling the rules of death. Tonari says Fushi is a foreigner and rules differ everywhere, but the islanders believe a champion needs victims. They think Fushi, with his immortal body, doesn't understand death. Tonari gets slapped by a villager, and her friends rush to her side. As the atmosphere becomes tense, Tonari feels the ground shake. Suddenly, Fushi is speared by a vine, and Gugu's form is stolen by a knocker. A giant stone bear appears, and Fushi transforms into Shiro, urging everyone to flee. Tonari, unaware of the danger knockers pose to Fushi, thinks his immortal body can win, so she doesn't lead her team to escape when Fushi warns them. Instead, as Fushi lures the knocker to an uninhabited area and seems at a disadvantage, Tonari's teammates distract the knocker, allowing her to whisk Fushi away. Fushi tells Tonari to leave quickly, mentioning that people have died because of the knocker due to him. Just then, the ground shakes, and Tonari pushes Fushi away from a crack, nearly falling in herself, but Fushi catches her. As the knocker, now a giant bear, is about to crush them, the earlier troublemaking villagers arrive, equipped and manage to bind the bear's hands. However, they can't control the fissures created by the knocker. Unsure of what to do next, Tonari directs the villagers to start shooting arrows with gunpowder. Fushi quickly transforms into Perona, but the bow is too heavy. Tonari's team brings him a lighter bow. Fushi then saves and shoots the knocker in the heart with gunpowder arrows, duplicating them as others run out. With a wave of his hand, he creates a pile of gunpowder arrows, and together, they defeat the knocker and recover the memories of everyone. Looking at the chaos, Fushi feels he has caused more trouble for everyone. Tonari tells him that sometimes what one can't solve alone, a team can handle together. Fushi thanks her, surprising Tonari, as she didn't expect such words from him. After defeating the knocker, Tonari and the others held a victory feast. Upa admired Fushi's ability to create gunpowder and specially brought him ox blood. They also learned about the Beholder and Fushi's past experiences from him. Someone wondered why Fushi couldn't transform into a knocker to attack them. Fushi explained that knockers feel different from normal humans. Mia was curious about Fushi's future dreams. Fushi said he wanted to be strong enough to defeat knockers alone, but he couldn't talk about dreams if he couldn't leave the island. Mia, inspired, shared her own goal to pursue her dreams once they left the island. Uroi wanted to raise a large group of animals. Sandel wished to become a doctor, and Upa felt his dream was already fulfilled when he witnessed the sunrise after the battle. Born on the island, Upa had never known the outside world. Fushi asked Tonari about her dream. She said she wanted to surprise her father. Confused, Fushi reminded her that her father had passed away, but Tonari did not respond to this. At that moment, an uncle approached Tonari, reporting that the captain was unwilling to prepare the boat. Tonari sighed, noting that with Fushi's help they might solve this easily. Then, she invited everyone to dine together. Though they only had a little food, Fushi transformed the little they had into a satisfying meal from his memories. After eating, everyone promptly fell asleep, as the food in Fushi's memories, often hosted by Hayase, occasionally contained a sleeping drug. Fushi felt a bit embarrassed and picked up Tonari's notebook, finding a note about inviting that person to dine. As Fushi prepared to leave, Tonari suddenly awoke, and feeling guilty about deceiving Fushi to the island, apologized. Fushi looked back at her silently. Tonari then opened her notebook and began writing her story. Tonari's dream was to write a book that would surprise her father. Her family was affluent, and her parents were loving. However, one morning, Tonari woke up to find her mother dead in the living room. The church accused her father of murder and exiled him to the island. Tonari could choose to stay as an orphan or go with her father to the island. Believing in her father's innocence, she followed him, entering a brutal environment filled with criminals and their families, where murders were commonplace and few were kind-hearted. The islanders were most enthusiastic about the gladiatorial contest to choose their leader. After watching several matches, Tonari realized that these people did not want a leader, but relished the dominance over life and death. One day, Tonari's father told her he planned to compete in the contest for a chance to leave, as he knew she disliked life on the island. He said it was dangerous for Tonari to be with him, and asked her to wait for him at the port to leave together, assuring her he would not die. Tonari could only pray at the arena that her father would survive. However, she soon found that while her father did not die, he increasingly became remorseless in killing. Tonari felt conflicted, relieved her father was alive but disturbed by his murderous transformation, no longer recognizing him as the man he once was. Tonari even preferred to believe her father was buried at the mass grave rather than accept he might be her mother's killer. Indeed, her father won the contest and left a book on a small boat intended as an 8-year-old gift for Tonari, hoping she would use it to write her favorite stories. Just as her father secured the leader's position and prepared to leave the island with Tonari, he was poisoned with tainted wine, and his body was thrown into the sea by those seeking revenge. Tonari, holding the book, turned away and left. Alone, Tonari cried holding the book amid ruins, where she met Mia and made friends with similar fates. By age 11, Tonari began planning her escape. At 12, using her wit and charm, she secured a job helping the captain transport people, hoping to escape through this plan. However, strict supervision of the crew, due to the local disdain for criminals, made Tonari lose sight of her goal. At 14, Tonari first saw Fushi at the port, his white hair striking. A woman told her that bringing Fushi to the island could change everything. Tonari knew this woman was a distinguished visitor, as their island often had spectators for the gladiatorial contest, who would buy favored islanders. Tempted by the woman's words and desperate for a chance to escape, Tonari lured Fushi and his companions to the island. Fushi's arrival indeed changed everything, marking a turning point in Tonari's fate. After regaining his memories, Fushi immediately went to see Pioran, indicating that the lock outside could be scratched off with a bear's claw. Tomorrow was the final contest, and he planned to claim the leader's position and leave the island openly with Pioran and the others. The next day during the contest, Tonari specifically sought out Fushi and brought him an ointment needle from Upa. She suggested Fushi save a file, so he could incapacitate his opponents without killing them. Fushi agreed, intending to take everyone away from the island afterward. However, upon entering the arena, Fushi discovered his opponent was Hayase, the very person who had killed March. Hayase's face was disfigured, but she was alive and had been a source of misfortune in Fushi's life. Angered upon seeing her, Fushi transformed into a bear and attacked her. During the confrontation, Hayase revealed that she was responsible for Perona's death and boasted about torturing her. This revelation enraged Fushi, who declared he would kill Hayase. Tonari sensed something was off, knowing it was uncharacteristic of Fushi to act in such a manner. However, Hayase's plan was to provoke Fushi and then use a sedative to attack him while he was distracted. To everyone's shock, Fushi collapsed. Hayase then feigned madness, claiming she had been caring for Fushi for 5 years and that he had run away. She urged the islanders to protect Fushi, praising his bravery for defending them against monsters. Tonari and others, knowing the truth from Fushi, realized Hayase was skilled at self-promotion. Hayase's plan was simple: to turn Fushi into a deity as part of a scheme to make the islanders worship him, thereby controlling them as a military force without intending to rule as the leader herself. She proposed to hand over leadership to Tonari, causing confusion among the crowd about who Tonari was. Mia urged Tonari to flee, but Hayase announced her intention to eliminate anyone close to Fushi, thereby nominating Tonari for leadership. The crowd was free to choose someone else if they disagreed, with Hayase claiming she would not interfere. Tonari and her group hurriedly escaped, while Hayase told the islanders that those who supported her would be rewarded with wealth and a comfortable life, proposing to turn the island into a sacred site. This attracted some religious followers. Afterwards, Hayase carried Fushi away. In a dream, Fushi met Boozman and others, only to find Hayase had also invaded the dreamscape, attempting to force him into objectionable acts. Just as she was about to strip Fushi, Tonari and her teammates interrupted, saving him from a worse fate. Hayase seemingly wanted to have a child with Fushi, likely to gain his immortality. Tonari and her group arrived, but found Fushi had been taken by Hayase. Just then, Fushi appeared next to Hayase, threatening her with a knife to release his friends. It turned out that the captured Fushi was just a shell. The real Fushi had transformed into a mole and hidden himself, able to create an empty body at will. Fushi, knowing Hayase's interest in him, demanded she let Tonari and the others leave, offering to stay on the island himself. The captain announced that Tonari would leave the island with her friends, and they could take 700 people with them. Tonari chose to take only children under 7 years old because she believed they deserved a choice and were not criminals. Among those taken were also siblings of opponents Fushi had previously encountered. Tonari stated that the opportunity to leave was fought for by Fushi, and she intended to fulfill a promise on his behalf. Pioran was also taken. However, just before their departure, Hayase drugged them, causing them to pass out. Fushi demanded that Hayase ensure their safe arrival. Hayase assured him she would not harm them, then poisoned Fushi as well. Meanwhile, Tonari woke up 5 minutes after being poisoned due to her high resistance to toxins, though she wasn't sure why. The large ship had already set sail. Tonari asked an uncle to secretly procure a small boat for her as she planned to return to the island to rescue Fushi. The owl that always accompanied Tonari followed as well. The others on the ship smeared Hayase's makeup, creating a diversion for Tonari to return. Tonari wanted to help Fushi because she saw him express anger like a human and believed he deserved a future like anyone else. Tonari successfully sneaked back onto the island and found the cellar where Fushi was thrown according to the intelligence. She prepared a glove to retrieve Fushi, who had turned into a mole, but found he had already left the cellar. They met on the roof, and Fushi was frustrated that Tonari had returned, as he had gone to great lengths to protect them. With no other options, Tonari decided to leave the island by boat. However, due to strong winds and waves that night, they had to seek shelter in a cave. There, Fushi transformed into Gugu and lit a bonfire. Tonari worried this might attract knockers, but Fushi said the beholder would warn him. Tonari became curious about the beholder, having heard that Fushi was created to record everything in the world. She speculated about the possible destruction of the world and guessed that Fushi might have been created by a deity. Fushi heard the concept of a deity for the first time. Tonari explained that deities are amazing beings who created the world from nothing, are kind to the good and ruthless to the wicked, and feel like parents to all creatures. Fushi remarked that the beholder was not like a parent, hence could not be a deity. Tonari then wondered if the beholder could be a messenger sent by a deity to stop evil people like her father. Fushi was surprised, as Tonari had previously said her father had not killed anyone. Tonari admitted she had lied. Initially, she believed her father was innocent. But when you suspect someone close to you of murder, you begin to question what drove them to crime. Tonari thought something must have forced her father, but she saw him smile after he joined the contest, suggesting he was happy about becoming the island's leader and the possibility of leaving the island with Tonari. Her first thought then was that perhaps her father had killed her mother, though Fushi thought the two were not necessarily related. Tonari said it was too late, as she had started doubting her father and felt deceived. She felt that all the bad people on the island deserved to die and hoped Fushi could understand her feelings. Having stayed on the island for so long, she occasionally thought about killing everyone. She wondered if she could lead a normal life outside the island. Fushi, however, felt that what their parents were like didn't matter. The children needed to do what they believed was right. He thanked Ling for rescuing him, and they both slept by the fire. That night, Tonari dreamed of returning home as an adult and seeing her parents, who were still alive. She decided it was time to envision a new future. So, she put a cloak on Fushi and started writing a new story outside the cave. When Fushi woke up, she planned to take him away from the island. Meanwhile, Hayase was planning to check on Fushi but found out he had disappeared. At the same time, there was news of an attack on the town. Before Fushi and Tonari could board the ship, the beholder appeared and told Fushi that the knockers were causing havoc in the town. Tonari tried to persuade Fushi to leave with her, because the island was mostly filled with bad people, and saving them wasn't necessary. However, there were a few innocents deceived into coming to the island, so Fushi decided to confront the knockers. The beholder agreed with Fushi's choice, mentioning that if not dealt with, the knockers would become a serious problem. The beholder informed Fushi that this time, a sword would be sufficient to handle the knockers, although their intentions were unclear. Hayase heard that the threat had emerged from a pile of corpses. When Fushi reached the town, he saw bodies wandering around, all of which had human forms. Unable to harm humans, Fushi hesitated. The townspeople told him that these beings had emerged from the pile of corpses and were already dead. Fushi reluctantly acted, but struggled to deliver fatal blows due to their human appearance. After much effort, he managed to remove the core. Tonari rushed to assist Fushi and finished the job with a knife. Just as Tonari was about to be attacked, her friends returned to the island. They decided to work together to tackle the bodies, which seemed to appear endlessly. Fushi decided to go to the pile of corpses to burn them, but shortly after leaving, the youngest girl, Upa, was controlled by tentacles that emerged from the ground. As Mia was about to help her up, a spear pierced Mia's abdomen. Fushi told Tonari and the others to flee while he carried the injured Mia, but Shiro's body was taken over by a knocker. The group placed Mia in a safe location, unsure how to handle the spear through her abdomen. Given the current medical capabilities, they couldn't save Mia. A child asked Fushi if he could save Mia, but Fushi wasn't capable of everything. He had never saved a person before. Fushi aimed at Upa, controlled by a knocker. Tonari then realized Upa was already dead. Tonari regretted holding her friends back. At that moment, Fushi couldn't bring himself to harm Upa, and the knocker took the opportunity to launch a surprise attack from behind. Uaroi, trying to buy time for Fushi and the others to escape, cut off his own arm and threw Fushi, transformed into a mole, to an owl. He himself was taken over by a knocker. His soul departed with his two friends. At the same time, Hayase cleared the bodies in town and headed to the corpse pit, finding Tonari and Sandal below, ready to kill Tonari. Fushi, transformed into a giant bear, stepped on Hayase. Hayase questioned if Fushi really dared to kill her, knowing Tonari and others were in danger below. Thus, Fushi had to abandon the confrontation to save them. Although he set fire to the bodies in the pit, the beholder mentioned 3 remaining knockers, those within MIA and 2 others. Seeing the bodies of their friends controlled brought Tonari and Sandal to tears. Tonari felt her impulsiveness had led to this tragedy, but Sandal said it was no one's fault. No one wanted this to happen. The beholder told Fushi that the knockers would soon root in the land, so they needed to be dealt with quickly. Fushi asked Tonari and Sandal to step back, though they planned to personally see off their friends. At this moment, Hayase came down, offering to handle the three, suggesting it would keep Fushi pure, clean, and beautiful, implying Fushi would owe her a favor. Tonari, having awakened, faced Hayase, who was threatening Fushi and trying to incur a debt. Tonari didn't hesitate to drag Hayase into the burning pit, but Fushi rescued both, sedating and tying up Hayase. Tonari raised a weapon to send off her friends, but Fushi took the sword and personally did so. He couldn't always step back due to human appearances. Tonari, looking at the bodies, told Fushi that Upa was sold by her parents for a silver coin, but was still a child who loved life. Uroi looked after them like an older brother. The islanders carrying the bodies were shocked to see Tonari and others had returned and sacrificed their lives for everyone on the island, deeply moving and shaming them. The island needed revival and a leader to inspire the people. Tonari, as this provisional leader, told the islanders to burn the accumulated bodies and find ways to encourage each other to survive. Fushi said he had to leave the island, fearing the knockers might follow, but intended to replenish his arsenal before leaving. Tonari and Sandal decided to stay. Their best friends rested forever on the island. They couldn't take them away, but planned to transform the island into a beautiful dwelling. Although guessing what the author intended, the transition felt abrupt, reminiscent of Gotham turning into Metropolis. Fushi helped replenish supplies on the island as events were winding down. Tonari and Sandal watched as Fushi left, taking Hayase with him. Tonari also released the owl that was with her. Upon awakening, Fushi questioned Hayase about her motives. Blushing, Hayase expressed her desire to stay by Fushi's side, admitting that she killed Perona and March out of jealousy over their closeness to Fushi. She confessed her love for Fushi at first sight during his fight with the bear god, even wishing for Fushi to kill her so they could merge into one. Hayase believed she was physically stronger than anyone Fushi had encountered before. Fushi, displaying an expression of a weary old man, decisively boarded another boat and kicked the one carrying Hayase away. He wouldn't kill a living person, but he marked a part of the sea for Hayase to find her own way, expressing his dislike for her and indifference to her fate. Just after Fushi left, Hayase collided with a knocker. Damn, has the villain evolved? Under the owl's guidance, Fushi found the harbor. Fushi located Grandma Pioran in a tavern, who was waiting for someone while eating 5 beans. The staff didn't ask her to leave, concerned that his presence might cause trouble, potentially harming Pioran. Fushi rushed back after realizing Pioran had no money. The staff were kind, and even brought Pioran some bread. While Pioran slept, Fushi quietly placed a pair next to her, planning to leave as a mole on a ship and part ways with her. However, worried about leaving without saying anything and Pioran waiting forever, he hastily disembarked, borrowed a pen and paper from a child on the street to write a farewell letter, not noticing that the pair he left had been eaten. Convinced that it was their final goodbye, he boarded the ship but remembered Pioran might need warm clothes, so he quickly made a coat to bring her. Discovering Pioran was gone and about to be taken back to the island, Fushi was about to rush to her rescue when he saw Pioran knock someone out with a stick, leaving him astonished. Fushi followed Pioran, noting she could live well without him but never smiled. The beholder, noticing Fushi's hesitation, inquired about his concerns. Fushi, recalling Tonari's words about the gods, asked the beholder who he really was. Evading the question, the beholder asked if Fushi wanted to stay with Pioran, warning that being with her might attract the knockers and that Pioran's days were numbered regardless. The beholder remarked that all humans must die, some with a choice, and others without. Suggesting Fushi witness it himself, he expressed sympathy for Fushi's attachment, reflecting on his transformation in the water and blaming himself for the deaths of 3 individuals on the island. Fushi resolved to deliver the coat and leave, but this time, Pioran suddenly woke up from her sleep. He grabbed Fushi, who was trying to escape, and immediately recognized him as Fushi. Then, he took Fushi to their original destination, a deserted island covered with dense forests. Meanwhile, Hayase, who was possessed by a knocker and not yet dead, caused trouble for centuries and even had a relationship with a young man she had saved. On the island, Grandma Pioran and Fushi started living a normal life. At 90, Pioran was still full of life. After many experiences, Fushi's mental age finally reached 14. During this time, the beholder kept an eye on them and would warn Fushi when the knockers approached. Fushi and Pioran had agreed to flee whenever knockers appeared, as confronting them could be dangerous. Fushi collected many creatures during this time, staying up later and waking up earlier than Pioran. He began to record his memories on paper and then burn them, as they would remain within him and could be manifested when needed. The two discussed Pioran's dreams. She expressed a desire to be young again, recalling her beauty and youth. However, at her age, she had few desires left, especially with Fushi as her dear grandchild, feeling her life was complete. Fushi learned the emotion of contentment from Pioran. Yet, Pioran gradually lost precious things. As she aged, her physical abilities declined, her memory became confused, and her temper worsened. She often forgot she had already eaten and would speak nonsense, showing signs of dementia. Fushi didn't understand why Pioran was changing, even though the beholder said it was normal. Nevertheless, Fushi couldn't accept it and quietly cared for her. One day, Pioran told Fushi that meeting him was the greatest fortune of her life. She mentioned rain was coming and asked Fushi to collect the fish and sweet potatoes. Before leaving, Fushi told her to cover herself with a blanket. As the smoke from the charcoal faded, Pioran suddenly spoke to the beholder, who had always been by Fushi's side, asking him to take her away now and transform her into a form beneficial to Fushi, knowing that the beholder also cherished him. The beholder appeared and told Pioran that her soul determined her body, and changing it might mean she wouldn't be the same. Pioran didn't mind, hoping her departure would help Fushi. The beholder agreed to her request, took out a sphere belonging to Fushi's origin, and transformed Pioran back into a young girl. She covered the sphere with her hand, experiencing the phases of youth, adulthood, and old age. When Fushi returned to the shed, he found that Pioran had passed away peacefully, a departure most sorrowful. Fushi cried all night and the next day burned Pioran's body. He prepared to record her departure and opened their last conversation. It was Pioran instructing Fushi to do what he wanted, just as she did. Fushi wept again and buried Pioran's ashes on the island. He then left the island with a donkey. Decades passed in a blink, and Fushi, now looking like a middle-aged man, could kill knockers in human form.